The controversial CO2 pipeline project in the Midwest got a surge of momentum yesterday. We've got the CEO of the effort on today's show with his reaction, and we'll also go over the long to-do list that remains before they start to dig. And it is a widely variable growing season. We'll hit both ends of the spectrum in today's Farmer Forum.
Live from the foothills of Hump Day via Farm Journal Studios, this is AgriTalk. This morning we begin with a conversation with Lee Blank from Summit Carbon. Then it's our Farmer Forum with panelists Sherman Newland and Kevin Ross. Directly following the news, Margie Eckelkamp from The Scoop. I'm handsome newsman Davis Michelson. Now here's the host of AgriTalk, Chip Lowry.
You know, I'll admit I feel kind of bad about some of the things I did getting ready for today's Farmer Forum.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
What happened?
Well, there were people that I knew were going to be stuck right in the middle of the floods up in northwest Iowa, and I still asked them to make time to come on the show. Now, most of them couldn't. And believe me when I say I completely get it. We'll have you on sometime when it makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to get into that area like we did yesterday with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Nag and get a feel for just how tough conditions are. So, Justin, Darren, there's others up there that I might have reached out to hop on the show today. No worries, guys. We will get you on sometime, and we'll talk about it. And just be safe. And, oh, man, look out for the family. Look out for friends. Look out for your communities up there as you're trying to take care of a dire situation in many cases. So, with that said, welcome to AgriTalk. I'm Chip. That's Davis. How are you guys today? How are you doing, Davis?
I'm doing good. I saw a thing on Facebook, and it's a friend of mine from the local area I used to live in, talking about some of the needs over there in the Spencer area for the flood recovery. I mean, we're talking flashlights, air pumps, sump pumps, dehumidifiers and fans, heavy-duty trash bags. This here post says that, and this is super local, but maybe your local area is doing something similar. The Parkersburg Fire Department, 5 to 6 p.m. every day this week, is taking donations. We're talking about diapers, baby stuff. Think of, everything that you had is washed away. What do you need? That's what those people need right now.
Right. Very cool. Thank you for doing that. And it's, like you said, there are other fire departments, other organizations that are going to be doing similar things across the Midwest, trying to help out those that are in need right now. Okay, boy, we've got Lee Blank, the CEO of Summit Carbon Solutions, on the show today. I'm looking forward to. I know what that conversation sounds like. We just because of timing, we had to record that. We've got it coming up for you next. It's a very good, and we tackle some of the controversial issues in the conversation with Lee coming up here in just a bit, and then we've got the Farmer Forum as well. All right, let's get to the news.
Chip, National Weather Service weather outlook. Monsoon-like conditions will persist across the Four Corners region over the next several days. Heavy to excessive rainfall may lead to instances of flash flooding. Strong to severe thunderstorms are possible this afternoon across portions of the Great Plains. Lower Mississippi Valley and Mid-Atlantic. A heat wave continues this week from the southern plains through the southeast.
Dude, did you see those storms last night over southeast and eastern Iowa?
Yeah.
Central
That's
Iowa.
Some scary stuff.
Oh, my God. They just sat there and continued to make rain and continue. There's still some rain down in southeast Iowa and continued to make funnel clouds. I don't know if there was any, maybe I've missed it this morning. I'm not sure if there was any serious damage down in that area, but just frightful.
Yep. Well, we're going to talk about this in the next seg, obviously, but the Iowa Utilities Board approved the Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline on Tuesday, allowing the company to use eminent domain to acquire land. Construction is slated to begin next year, aiming for operation by 2026. The pipeline, the largest of its kind, will transport liquefied carbon dioxide from ethanol plants in Iowa and neighboring states to North Dakota. The approval is contingent on securing necessary permits in South and North Dakota. The pipeline spans over 2,000 miles, including nearly 700 miles in Iowa, with 75% of the Iowa route's landowners signing voluntary easement agreements. Critics argue the pipeline benefits corporations at the expense of rural communities and poses safety risks without significantly reducing climate pollution. Whew, lots to unpack there.
Yeah, and it's all in an effort to. There are some updates to some of the things that everybody is reporting. You know, the 75% of the Iowa routes on the 700 miles. And that's kind of old information at this point, to be honest with you. We'll get into that with Lee Blank from Summit Carbon in just a bit.
Good. Well, United Airlines Chief Sustainability Officer Lauren Riley emphasized the critical need for cooperation with the oil industry to make sustainable aviation fuel economically viable, citing the lack of infrastructure as a major hurdle. SAF, mainly made from recycled cooking oil and other sources like household waste, currently costs at least twice as much as traditional jet fuel. And finally here, USDA reduced its 2024 grocery price increase forecast, now predicting a 1% rise. That's down from the 1.2% forecast in May. Overall, Chip, food prices are still expected to increase by 2.2%, and restaurant prices up by 4.2%. Over to you, buddy.
All right. Thank you very much, Davis. Let's bring in Margie Eckelkamp, editor of The Scoop. Good morning, Margie.
Good morning, Chip.
So talk to me. We've got a lot of aerial applications of crop protection products that are going to be taking place again this year. What should people be thinking about as they get ready for the spray season?
Yeah, you're spot on. There are a lot of acres that are treated by our aerial application. In fact, all cropland applications in the U.S., 28% is done by an aerial applicator. Okay. Aerial applicators apply over 127 million acres of crop protection every year. And I really wanted to highlight maybe two big considerations that those aerial applicators are doing now, if they haven't done already, to gear up for this spray season. And first, they're ensuring that all of their applications are accurate, both crewed and uncrewed applications, right? So both by plane and by drone. They should have their spray patterns analyzed for their droplet size uniformity and effective swath width. And our friends at the Ag Aviation Association have a program called SAFE that do that. Second, all applications should use their wind directional buffer zones. This is especially important around waterways and organic fields. So a huge amount of consideration is put in to all of these applications. I do also want to highlight, while we see increasing conversations around what's possible with those unmanned drone platforms, the manned aerial applicators are still doing about 99% of all applications. So we appreciate all those talented and trained pilots up there. I was with a local farmer last night, and they've got a young person in their family who's actually going to be going to flight school. So a bright future.
Okay. All right, very cool. Yeah, there's a future for those aerial applicators, even with drones coming on, just because I think more people are going to be looking at aerial applications, whether it be by plane or by drone in the future. All right, Margie, good stuff. Thank you. Get more on that, www.thedailyscoop.com. Lee Blank from Summit Carbon up next.
AgriTalk is brought to you by United Animal Health, scientifically better animal nutrition. Learn more at unitedamh.com.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. Glad that you are with us. We've got the Farmer Forum coming up at the bottom of the hour. First, joining us right now, Lee Blank, CEO of Summit Carbon Solutions. Lee, it's great to talk with you again. Welcome back to AgriTalk.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chip. I appreciate being on.
Excellent. Glad you're here. The Iowa Utilities Board, it took its time with this decision, but yesterday it approved the permit for your CO2 pipeline project. What what does that mean now that the permit has been approved?
Well, again, Chip, there's lots of processes to our project, but permitting is really front and center for us as we move forward. And Iowa's a very large piece of the overall footprint of our project. So getting the IUB to actually to approve, give us the order for the construction of the pipeline project in the state of Iowa, I think is extremely important. I think it demonstrates a commitment by the state of Iowa to the ethanol industry and to agriculture, and it also demonstrates a commitment to get these projects done in to the other states as well, as we think about how we move the project now through the balance of the permitting process. So it's a very important step, Chip. It's not the last one. We're very thankful that the IUB was diligent in what they did. It's a big project. We understand that. It takes time. There's a lot of affected stakeholders and landowners. And so frankly, it was a long process, but a very diligent one. And we appreciate the IUB for it.
Well, yeah, it was a thorough investigation into the whole thing. It took 3 years, right?
It did. It close to 3 years. And again, a very active 3 years, as a matter of fact. And so, yes, it was a long process.
Okay, so what does this mean? Is it a green light to start digging in Iowa?
Well, again, we don't really have the ability to start digging in the state of Iowa until we have a project in a position that we can fund the project. And without the additional volumes in other states we will need, we're not going to be able to go out and fund this large of a project, Chip. So it's one step. Again, we've got to work through North Dakota and South Dakota as well and get those permit applications approved and underway. And so from that perspective, no digging as of yet, but yet a step towards the fruition and the maturation of the project for sure.
Yeah. Now, it's a controversial project across the board and across the states, but odds are North Dakota's looking pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, we would say that's true. I think North Dakota tends to be a state that considers what we're doing advantageous and something that they should be participating in. And so from that perspective, we feel good about the progress in North Dakota. We think it's going well. Where we're at, Chip, is basically all the hearings in North Dakota are finished. We finished the pipeline hearings several weeks ago, and now again, several weeks ago as well, finished the sequestration hearings. So ultimately, we're done with hearings in North Dakota. We are now just waiting on the Utility Commission and the NDIC and the Department of Mineral Resources in North Dakota to actually give us a ruling on the permits, 1, to build the pipe, and 2, to build the sequestration sites. So we're in good order there. South Dakota, Chip, will be resubmitting our application to the PUC in early July, and that process will then get started and move through its normal course.
Okay, and that will take time.
It will.
Yeah. There's no question that it will take some time in South Dakota. I don't know if it will be as time consuming as it was in Iowa, but there will be some time before South Dakota can make a decision on that. Then let's see, the other 2 states of the 5, is it Nebraska and Minnesota?
Correct.
Okay. What's the status there?
The status of Nebraska, and again, Nebraska doesn't have a utility commission, so the process is a little shorter in that state. So we don't want to call it phase 2, Chip, but it's a phase that we can start later in the process. Once we've identified what the timeline looks like in South Dakota, we'll make a decision on Nebraska and when to get started. Minnesota, we have an active application on a small line in the northern part of the state. That will go into hearings in August, and we'll have our hearings for our pipeline construction permit for that small lateral, and then get a ruling on that late this year. The balance of Minnesota will come almost in a phase 2, Chip, as we move through it. Again, it's a long process in Minnesota, and so that process is, we're just going to be patient as we move through it. But our intent is to work very hard to service the ethanol industry in that Minnesota region.
Okay. All right. Of course, the big question that comes from all of this is what it does to the ability of Summit to use eminent domain on some of the ground that landowners may not want anything to do with the pipeline. Clear it up for us on that, Lee. What does it do to the status of eminent domain?
Well, I think, Chip, that there's things in the order that we have to consider around eminent domain that I don't have a clear picture yet, since we just were delivered the order this morning. So I may have to be a little patient with my commentary on that and get back to you at some date in the near future. But know this, I think the attitude around Summit Carbon hasn't changed. We want to continue to work voluntarily with landowners. And, Chip, we can do that right up to the very end, and we'll continue to do that right up to shovels in the ground. So we're very committed to continue to work on that strategy, which has been successful for us in the past. So we continue to think about how can we come to voluntary arrangements with the various landowners that we're going to affect. Yeah.
As I understand it, and correct me if this number is off base or outdated, either one, but about 75% of the landowners in Iowa that you would need to do a deal with, you've gotten a deal done with. Is that about right?
That's correct, Chip. One thing to qualify on that is that that's on the base route, because with the expansion of the addition of Poet and Valero, we have additional laterals in Iowa. Those laterals now will have to think about the next permitting process to get those laterals approved in the state. And when you start thinking about the number of the amount of right of way that we have to work with on the new laterals, it dilutes our current number down just a little bit. But on the base route, we were in excess of 75% voluntarily acquired.
Okay. All right. That's the status update on this project. Let's get back to the why. Why of the pipe? Why spend billions of dollars to build this system, Lee?
Yeah, I think it's really, if you think about the ethanol industry and where a vast majority of it is, there just isn't the geology to sequester. So if we want to keep the ethanol industry competitive and we want to put it in a position where it can compete with other areas of the country that might be able to directly sequester, the 5-state region that we're working in needs the infrastructure project. And it's a large piece of the industry, Chip. So we want to make sure that we put the appropriate infrastructure in place so that the ethanol industry can continue to grow across the 5 states that we're working on and can compete specifically into the new markets that are now demonstrating real viability as we move forward. And so, ultimately, the cost of production on corn, it's not quite break even. I think it's a little bit less than break even for the U.S. farmer today, just like the U.S. farmer has always done, Chip. We have got to find ways to open new markets and respond to those markets. And this infrastructure project is one of the ways that the U.S. agriculture is going to be able to do that. That's why it's so extremely important that we get it accomplished.
Okay. Lee, when a landowner questions the safety of the CO2 pipeline, what's the answer? What do you tell that person?
Yeah, everything, Chip, has some sort of small risk. And so I can't say it's completely riskless around our particular project. But the one thing we can assure the landowner is this will be the safest pipeline built in the history of the U.S. Technology will allow us to do that. And so ultimately, if you look at the safety record of commodity pipelines across the U.S., it is the safest way to move commodities just based on historical data and how safe pipelines have traditionally been. The great thing about our project is with new technology, we can take the next step on safety and even drive a much more, a greater safety environment around our particular company and project than even existed before. So you're taking one of the best industries and safest industries to move commodities, and you're taking that next logical maturation step up the curve of cautiousness and safety.
Gotcha. Real quick, Lee, what's the soonest that you think you might be able to start moving CO2 up to North Dakota?
Well, again, it'll take us a year from the time we go into construction. And so ultimately, Chip, until I really know the exact timeline on South Dakota and when those hearings will be completed and we can get a ruling, it's difficult to say. We would think that by mid to late next year, we should find ourselves in a position that we could be thinking about construction.
All right. Lee, thank you so much for your time. We'll get another update from you in the future.
That sounds great, Chip. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you, Lee. That is Lee Blank, CEO of Summit Carbon Solutions. We got the Farmer Forum coming up next here on AgriTalk.
Time for Markets Now with the experts from Pro Farmer.
Joining us now, Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady. Beej, when I take a look at what's going on in the grain markets, it looks like a risk-on day in commodities. Is that about right?
Yeah, Chip. We got some corrective gains going on in the grain and soy markets here. Most of them, anyway, aside from soy meal. But yeah, in general, and you look at the wheat market. It leading to the upside, and wheat has been the leader to the downside. So that's the first sign that it's corrective in nature, and the wheat market become extremely oversold from a short-term perspective, and needed a breather, and so we're getting some of that. The key will be is whether we can hold on to these corrective gains as we move through the session, because attitudes, like I said, are just extremely poor across the grain and soy markets at the moment.
Yeah, and the U.S. dollar index is higher today again. That's got to cap the potential, I would think.
Yeah, I would think so. The other side of it is that we have USDA reports coming up on Friday, and some key data, some potentially market moving data with acreage and June 1 stocks, and so we're probably seeing the funds wanting to cover some of those short positions as we head into the reports. And if that's the case, then we should see some more strength tomorrow and early on Friday as well.
Gotcha. Okay, take us to livestock trade. We've got some solid gains in the cattle complex and lean hogs.
Absolutely. So a good, strong morning of trade across the livestock markets. Moderate to strong gains in live cattle futures, strong gains in feeders, and you mentioned it. Even the hog market's getting involved with moderate to strong gains there. So fundamentally supported in the cattle market and corrective in nature in hogs.
Thanks, Brian. Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady on Markets Now.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. When news breaks, the news makers talk about it on AgriTalk with Chip Flory.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm Chip. Glad that you are with us on this Wednesday morning, which means it is time for the Farmer Forum here on AgriTalk. Sherman Newland, Southern Illinois, joins us right now. How you doing, Sherman?
Oh, doing pretty well, Chip. Pretty well, thanks.
Good. Glad that you are here. We're going to get to you here in just a minute or two. Kevin Ross from Western Iowa by way of an airport someplace joins us as well. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Chip, doing real good. Yep, in Chicago Midway right now, coming back from D.C.
All right. Well, safe travels to you, but holy smokes, dude. Your area, Western Iowa, further north, especially northwest Iowa, southwest Minnesota, South Dakota, along the Vermilion River, Nebraska along the Missouri River. There's a million different creeks and rivers that have come out of their banks in your part of the world, dude. What's the situation?
Yeah, it's another round of major storms last night that I went through home, and just received a text for moving a bunch of baseball games because light poles at the field are down, and that's the kind of winds that we had. I don't think I've ever seen that one happen before. But last time I was on here, we were talking about the tornado in Minden, and shortly thereafter, there's plenty of the worst one yet over Greenfield, not too far away, and man, just unbelievable. Yeah, hail and high winds last night. Lots of folks calling, turning in wind claims today on corn, and just all kinds of crazy stuff, let alone all the moisture we've had. We go from the driest May on record last year to I think the wettest in a lot of cases right around home, and then June setting records as well. So pretty crazy.
Certainly is. No doubt about it. Start with the corn crop, Kevin. How's the corn crop handling it?
Until last night, we looked pretty good. There was early stuff really had looked phenomenal once it finally hit that nitrogen that had gone down a little bit deeper with all the rain. Man, it started to look really phenomenal. And then, even the middle planted stuff and the later stuff, I think was doing really good. Had maybe a few stand issues here and there just because of the heavy rains that he planted at the wrong time. And I had a couple fields like that where we had some seed that got moved around, which you hate to see, but with a 5-incher and those types of rains, you'll have that every once in a while. So, but really that corn crop had looked really good.
Okay. And soybeans, how are the beans?
Moving along. It's an interesting year. You had such a spread out planting season that you have, just different stages of everything from corn to beans. And it just seems like you're, it's one of the longest planting seasons we've ever seen just because we got started so early. So, you got some beans that were just getting planted a couple weeks ago and some that were early beans that are not quite knee high already. So huge spread and difference in crop.
Okay. All right. Sherman, does it sound like Kevin's talking about does it sound like he's even talking about the same planet to you?
Not really. No, not at all. We've been extremely dry in southeast Illinois and probably the whole southern half of Illinois. Starting out the year, we were really dry. Got all our ammonia on early, but nobody was really pushing planting because it was cold. So we really didn't get started planting till middle of April for corn and beans both. But then it drug out for 6 weeks. We didn't finish till right before Memorial Day weekend. So I've got corn now that's tasseling. Thank goodness that's under irrigation. But then I've got corn that's not even, mid chin high that we planted last and in wet conditions, because we just started getting rain through the whole, last half of April and the whole month of May. But then, I was bragging about how good our corn looked, the early stuff, it's got the best looking corn we had when I was side dressing, and then the rain stopped. After Memorial Day, we hadn't had a drop of rain the whole month of June. Now, yes, yesterday we had a tenth or two come through, but when it's just dry, that doesn't really matter. So, the crop's all over the place down this way. We got guys in part of the county that had rain that was missing on us, and they just got finished planting a couple of weeks ago, and corn's probably just 2 leaps. So things have a long way to go around here. And but we'll see. The forecast does look like maybe it's going to change, but it needs to. Otherwise, if we go into July and we don't get any rain, we will be, in a world of hurt.
Well, there is, like you said, there is some rain in the forecast for your area, and I think that's part of the reason that the corn market was under pressure yesterday, isn't it?
Oh, I think so. There was rain on the radar. If you looked at the rain, it's hard to rally when you're getting, rain in that eastern part of Iowa, northwest Illinois, and then coming down through Champaign and whatnot. But the radar look was heavier than what actually fell. It looked like it was going to be heavy, here, and then we ended up getting a tenth, maybe a tenth or two at that. So, but yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah. Yep. No doubt. Kevin, I think the answer to this question might be pretty obvious to you, but let's talk about it a little bit. What do you need? What do you need for the corn and soybean crops over there, western Iowa?
Well, we need Mother Nature to be a little bit nicer to us. But honestly, we got a lot of moisture, sunshine, and just a good amount of heat. As long as we don't get the extremes, we're setting up pretty good, I think, from a crop standpoint around home for the most part. But you get these extreme events like we had last night, at this stage in the crop. If we can get past a few of these, that's going to be we'll be sitting all right. But like I say, you can't really have you never have a summer where you have any go through it with none of those, and with these stages where they are with crops and like I said, all different stages from the spread out planting season. That window is not just one little window for these type of storms where you have the chance at brittle snap and green snap issues. It's kind of spread out throughout the summer. So I don't think we'll be out of the woods, for quite a while on on these big winds and things like that. But we got to stay away from these, 70, 80, 90 mile per hour ones like there was yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times, Kevin, when I'm talking to somebody about what's going on in these areas that are seeing some floods and too much water, it seems like the response I typically get from them is, well, there's more hills than there are valleys. There's more high spots than there is low spots. But some of those low spots that I've got to assume that they have ground out and just there's going to be holes in fields all over the northern half of western Iowa, right?
Yeah, I think so. I've talked to several folks up there, and especially where these rivers have come out, and a friend of mine that farms right outside Emmitsburg up there. He thought he had 1,000 acres that'd be gone. There was he sent me a picture of one that he said that was a couple hundred in the picture that I could see, and these rivers, you got a lot of great ground along those things, and a lot of the high producing ground. If you end up with those things, flooding out as long as they have, or as much water going through there, you're going to have significant damage. I'm not sure how the market takes that yet. I don't think the market can really evaluate it at the moment either. But certainly there's a lot of people who would tell you the same thing you just said, Chip. That there's a lot of good looking stuff out there that it rolls off of to the lower areas where it's going to sit. Yeah, we'll lose some crop there, but the top end of the other stuff maybe takes it out. Although I know when you're going through the field in the combine, you get zeros coming in, you go through a hole, and that yield monitor, man, it takes a big hit in that average when you're going through a zero area.
Yeah, it does. No question about it. No doubt about it. Sherman, one of the reasons I love having you on the Farmer Forums is because you can come at these conversations from a couple different directions. You're also a professional risk manager. You're a broker. Has the market accounted for the things that we're talking about, the dry conditions in your part of the world, and some of the, we just heard from Kevin, a buddy up in Emmitsburg says he thinks he lost 1,000 acres of corn.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting these high crop ratings, right? And they're definitely higher than what we were last year. And we had a 177, record type yield last year. But that's all they're looking at, the rain makes grain. And so, no, I don't think they're accounting for the damages. I am curious, how bad it is up in your area. I definitely see the pictures and everything on Twitter and whatnot. And I farm long enough, and you get too much rain, that's just as bad as not having rain, right? So the 181 type yield, in my estimation, is off the table right now because there's just so much variance. Not only here, but the East Coast guys out there are burning up. Kentucky's not good this year, so we don't have everything hitting on all cylinders, in my estimation. But the market thinks we are, right? And they're also thinking we're going to have bigger acres. Whether those are out there or not, we'll have to wait and see on Friday.
Right. Yep. You mentioned it. We get the acreage report out on Friday, and we also get the quarterly grain stocks to give us an idea of how the old crop's getting used up at that acreage number. I think that's where people are going to look at first, aren't they, Sherman?
And in my estimation, yes. I don't think they're going to change the yield. It's going to be the acres.
Right.
And, so if we can come in under that 90, close to 89, 88 and a half or something, I think that's going to be bullish to the market.
Gotcha. All right. We are in the middle of the Farmer Forum with Sherman Newland from Southern Illinois, Kevin Ross from Western Iowa. We talked about it with Lee Blank, the granting of the permit from the Iowa UB for Summit Carbon. What's Kevin's reaction next?
AgriTalk is brought to you by Atticus, providing battle-tested chemistries you know and trust.
Welcome back to the Farmer Forum here on AgriTalk. We are having a conversation with Sherman Newland from Southern Illinois, Kevin Ross from Western Iowa. Kevin, yesterday the Iowa Utilities Board granted the permit to Summit Carbon Solutions for, I guess, phase one, the base route? I'm not exactly sure exactly how to say it, because based on the conversation that we had with Lee Blank here at the start of the show, the CEO of Summit Carbon, it sounds like they've got to go back to the Iowa Utility Board for some of those add-on routes that were taken on by Summit after the Navigator closed its doors. It's progress for those that want this pipeline built, but there's still a long ways to go, isn't there, Kevin?
Yeah, I did a little bit of reading on it earlier today, and knew they gotten the approval, but it does sound that way when you kind of read what they've what they actually voted on and approved. So I do think it's a ways from being done. It seems to me like you got a lot of work yet to do on their end, but it is a positive step for the ethanol plants, I think, that are tying into it, and certainly the industry as you're trying to lower carbon and trying to lower those scores to keep ethanol moving.
Yep. Kevin, give me your take. How important is this?
It's important, Chip. I think as you move forward, whether you like it or not, the world is talking and continues to talk about climate change, and that discussion ties around carbon. That's the route that they've taken, and the horse that they've hitched to is carbon. And so that doesn't appear like that's changing anytime soon. So whether you agree or disagree with climate change or carbon scoring, I hate to say it, it doesn't really matter, because that's the way that the market is dictating that you view things. And so if you're an ethanol plant, if you're anybody in the biofuel space, and you're scored on a carbon index and has a number tied to it, you really have to think about how to lower that, how you can move the most fuel, and how you can make the most profit on it. So, yep. Sitting on a couple of the boards that I do in biodiesel and the ethanol world, that's what you got to do to make money for your investors. So, those are the decisions you make. Every project you look at has a score tied to it, and if you can reduce your score with that project, it makes it more profitable. So, the pipeline is one significant piece of that for ethanol plants, because you can lower that score in a big way and lower that CI, that index, to move your fuel to California or other big markets that are really, those low carbon fuel markets.
Yep. Sherman, from your perspective, and I want it both as a producer and as a market analyst broker, same question. How important is this project to the corn market?
I think it's very important. I mean, I'm looking at this as we need the sustainable aviation fuel to use up our corn, right? We need to get that passed. We need to get it going. Otherwise, we're going to be swimming in mountains of corn because of the production that South America has. I sit on an ethanol board here as well, and we're actually going through this process. We don't have to go very far, but about 4 miles. And, it's a long process to get this done, to do put the carbon in the ground, but you got to get, land rights. You got to get, people to sign off on it. You got to get permits. Those things take a long time, if not years to do. And then you got to build the project. So, but you got to start somewhere, right? So, we're in the middle of this process as well. But, once the ethanol industry, if we can get this done, can get to the lower carbon score, you got to have the plants to make it in airplane fuel, right? Airline fuel.
Right.
And that's going to take time, but you got to start somewhere. Right.
Right.
And I think, as a farmer, looking at this and what it can do for prices eventually down the road, I think it's something we got to have, but we can't do it the way the EPA tried to do it with the GREET formula, here recently.
Yeah.
By making everybody do no-till and cover crops and the nitrogen process. So, they got to find a way. If they really wanted to, they could just flip a switch and say, yes, we're going to use ethanol. But, they don't want to do that, right? So they got to make
That's right.
More difficult.
That is exactly right.
I want.
Well, if those that are making the rules didn't dislike corn-based ethanol as much as they've been conditioned to, then it would be easier to flip the switch. But it seems like, Kevin, it seems like they've been conditioned to anytime it's corn-based ethanol, you got to raise an objection.
Well, that's exactly right. The way that they've done it for years, excluding ethanol from corn in several different rulings along the way, and making it just difficult at EPA, and really, I think, hamstringing an industry, at several points along the way. It's been frustrating, and that's why we're out here, and I'm out here in DC this week on behalf of biodiesel and the Clean Fuels Association. But I get out here as well for ethanol, and I tell you what, if you don't keep fighting the fight, you don't keep pressure on, EPA and USDA and others to make sure that we're in the right spot. And typically USDA is on our side always on these issues. I think they do a good job. But and now you got, these tax credits, you got commerce involved and other things that, other agencies that we typically didn't deal with. It's a big change. A lot of work to do.
And we got to figure out exactly what used cooking oil is.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, come on.
Exactly.
It just the loopholes that are sought after, and it just we got to define what used cooking oil is. We're getting that process done. Kevin, good luck with it. Be safe in your travels, and good luck at home dealing with all the water, man.
Thanks, Chip.
You bet. Sherman, I hope you catch a rain, buddy.
Yep. I hope so, too.
All right. We'll see you in August. That is Sherman Newland from Southern Illinois, Kevin Ross from Western Iowa. Thank you so much for listening this morning. Come back this afternoon. We're going to have a conversation with Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions, right here on AgriTalk.